Well, a very good day to you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Candy Talk here on Herman Manyora's YouTube channel. My name is Evans Okinyi, and it's always my pleasure to bring you up to date with comprehensive analysis of all that is taking place within our beautiful country, Kenya, and of course across the borders. A lot has been happening, and this fine afternoon I'm joined here by my resident guest, Wakili Willis Otieno, who's been away for a couple of weeks, let me say 2 or so. Wakili, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Yes.
How have you been?
I'm okay. Good to be back.
Good to see you too at this point in time, and of course allow me to say that we are happy to have you back, and we still pray for you. We know what happened, and we still pray that let Mzee's soul continue resting in peace at this moment. What is it that you learned from him? What legacy does he actually leave behind that you can actually cling on to as a man?
It's more of honesty and being pro-people. That's all. Just empower people around you.
Okay.
That's the most important lesson I learned from my father. Empower people around you, and the rest will be history. That is a lesson I carry forward. It's about the people.
And that legacy lives on.
Yes.
Definitely, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's get to it. And Wakili, I don't know whether you still consider yourself a prophet also to say, but then as we talk right now, remember the last time we had a conversation here, we are not going to the AUC elections, but as we talk right now, Raila Amolo Odinga lost that election. Of course, the new AUC chairperson is Yusuf from Djibouti. Kenyans are actually wondering and asking what really happened here. Where did we get it wrong? Why did Baba actually lose? And that is a question that Kenyans are asking across the border. Let me get it from your point of view. What do you make of all these happenings?
You know, Hillary Clinton, when she lost the elections to Donald Trump, she wrote a book. And the title of that book is What Happened. And it is the little things that her campaign did or failed to respond to that ended up costing her that election. So also, as we discuss now the Kenyan loss, because I don't believe Raila lost. In my view, it is Kenya that lost the election. Raila, in terms of his stature and his standing in the continent, I will be hard-pressed to find any other son of Africa who has the stature and the caliber of Raila Odinga, who is more Pan-Africanist in terms of advocating for the ideals of a Pan-African movement in present day than Raila Odinga. He was the best candidate. But the best candidate did not win. Did not win because, in my view, of the global geopolitics and more so Kenyan position on some of the issues that are emerging in the continent. The number one reason that Kenya lost this election was because of our position in DRC. Kenya had taken a hostile position in regard to the position taken by SADC countries. The SADC countries are so immersed on the issue of DRC and the invasion of Goma by the M23 rebels and other rebel groups. We must remind ourselves that sometimes last year, William Ruto, the Kenyan government, hosted the Congo rebels in Kenya, where they launched a new rebel movement. So already, the Kenyan country is seen as supporting a rebel group.
I'm not aware of that.
It was there in public. In fact, the president of DRC had to recall the ambassador because of the launch of the March movement in Kenya. They were hosted here in Kenya. And then Kenya is also perceived to be supporting or sympathetic to the M23 rebels in the DRC. In the run-up to the elections, M23 had captured Goma. On the day of the ballot, M23 had moved in and had captured Bukavu airport. So top of the mind of the African president voter on that day, what is the crisis on that day? The crisis on that day was the issue in North Kivu. And what is the role of the countries offering themselves for election? Not individuals, countries. The Kenyan position is seen as a player. And that is what informs the 10 votes that Madagascar was receiving in the first 2 rounds. Those were largely, in my view, SADC votes. SADC as a bloc had 16 votes. They were solely voting, 10 of them were voting for the Madagascar candidate. And you saw the moment the Madagascar candidate lost and dropped off, the votes didn't move to Raila. The votes moved to the Djiboutian candidate. He was the one gaining. Raila was gaining marginally. So we cannot ignore the SADC vote. In fact, if Kenya had rallied SADC from the beginning, Raila would have won the election in the first round. Because the 10 votes that Madagascar was receiving will have gone to the Kenyan candidate. And plus the ones that he had, he will be at 32, 33. It becomes easier to build consensus around that candidate because we'll be making a strong point at inception. We did not. The same William Ruto had taken a position when Goma fell, publicly saying, I've spoken with Macron. Publicly announced it. He couldn't even tell her that I've spoken to Ramaphosa. I've spoken with Tshisekedi. I've spoken with the Troika, the Angolan president who is leading the Troika, or the Mozambique president, or the Zimbabwean president. He said, I've spoken with Macron. The Francophonies have a position on the meddling of France in Africa. So Kenya was not a strong contender. We managed to ostracize certain groups. The president of Senegal was in prison 3 weeks to the time he was elected, when he was released. We had just renditioned, reformed Besigye from Kenya to Uganda. He's now on hunger strike. Besigye had made a travel to Senegal to see Faye in prison. That is his comrade in arms. He had seen the suffering that Faye was going through. Faye is now president, sitting at the AU to cast a vote for the next chair. And he sees on the ballot, Kenya country. And on that day when they're casting that vote, in Faye's mind, his friend Besigye is on hunger strike, being held in a military establishment in Uganda. He was arrested in Kenya. The Kenyan government arrested him, had him abducted, and refolded him to Uganda to face persecution in a military court. And there was a court order from the Supreme Court in Uganda saying he should be tried, if at all, in a civilian court, had not been honored. So it was lost. Without SADC, there was no way the Kenyan candidate was going to win. And I said that on this show, not once, almost 2 times. Last year and early this year.
Okay.
Hi there. My name is Nongo Njao, property consultant at 1442 Kusini. We are a new project coming up in South B, Sana Sana area. We are close to Mombasa Road, about 700 meters to Mombasa Road. We also have a bunch of amenities around us, schools, hospitals, mosques, churches, and Capital Center is only a stone throws away. I will want to tell you about our 1-bedroom, which is going for 5.45 million, and our 2-bedroom going for 7.45 million shillings. Our 2-bedroom is a master and suite, and all our units feature Dolby areas.
So definitely without the support from the Southern African countries at this point, I'm looking at a situation whereby we also have our East African community here, the body. And of course, in as much as the M23 are at the central part of this entire crisis, but then M23 itself is not a country. So diplomatically, we are dealing here with Rwanda. Do you believe that the president would have taken some sort of a different approach to this that perhaps would have helped cushion Raila against this particular loss?
In my view, since SADC as the regional bloc active in that region had taken a position, a prudent country that is seeking for continental leadership should have taken the position that we are going to be led by the SADC position. So you align yourself with the SADC position. Because what is your personal peculiar interest as a country in DRC? We don't share a border with DRC. The SADC countries share borders with DRC. So you just align with the SADC position and let the SADC countries lead the path to finding a solution to the DRC conflict. And that has been the position that regional bodies have taken, even the AU has taken, that when there's a strong regional body leading an intervention, we'd allow the regional body to take the leading role. And the African Union comes to support the regional body. And you saw the response of Korea to the SADC letter that was issued. That is not how you conduct diplomacy. In essence, he just abused SADC countries very arrogantly, calling the Secretary General of the SADC to be a mere bureaucrat, cannot tell countries how to vote. That person you are calling a mere bureaucrat cannot issue such a communique without the approval of his president. He is just but their messenger. So when you insult him, you're insulting the president. How do you expect them to vote for you? So this thing was bound to fail because of William Ruto and his failures in the continent. It had nothing to do with Raila. In fact, if you asked me, the 20-something odd votes Raila was receiving was largely by sheer strength of Raila as a person. If it was any other Kenyan on that ballot, I would be surprised if they got more than 5 votes. Even to be a strong contender as he was, is because of Raila's sheer character and the force that he has and his network that he has built over years. Some of these presidents have been his personal friends. So probably some of them are voting for him out of that. That if they didn't have a strong regional interest in the elections, at least the personal relation they have with Raila and their relationship going back in the days and knowing his stance on some of these issues may have persuaded them to vote for him. But where it mattered was more so where you have a regional position on an issue that is affecting the sovereignty of a nation. Where does your country stand? In this particular instance, the Kenyan country's stance was anti the SADC stance. And we cannot fault SADC for taking the position they did. Because they also have their own interests. And who led us to that position? William Ruto. Meddling in the affairs of another country and ignoring the positions that have been developed by the regional bloc. Remember, South Africa had lost 13 soldiers when M23 advanced. Some of those soldiers, their bodies have not even been repatriated to South Africa for decent burials. Tanzania lost soldiers. In South Africa now they are baying for war. How will Ramaphosa explain casting a vote to a country that is perceived to be aligned in the conflict in Congo, to a side that may have caused the deaths of the South African soldiers? Those are some of the questions. So our positioning globally messed us up. Look at Sudan. Ruto was hosting a Meti here. When you have the regime in Sudan that is partly supported by Egypt, you are supporting a rebel group trying to forcefully take over power. How does it help your cause? You turn the Northern African region to be hostile to you. So it was a lost cause. But for me, I would not even analyze Northern Africa. It is squarely on SADC. Without SADC, 16 votes was lost.
So you're talking about, for you, you blame it on, of course, our diplomatic relations now with the Southern African countries. But at the same time, there is also the issue about the northern part of Africa. Definitely talking about the Arabian world who voted as a bloc maybe for the Djibouti candidate. And we also are having the situation of the Francophone countries. And you here saying that the move by President William Ruto to actually say that he called Macron would have affected them. How did this actually happen?
Of course, to an extent, you know, the Francophone countries, most of them are not happy about the meddling by France in their local affairs. And when something like what happened in DRC happens, I mean, you can't be the first person as the chair of ESC, that the first person you are calling or you're announcing to us you've called is France. When France is accused of meddling in many African countries. Why not even issue the first time that I've called, I've spoken with Ramaphosa, or I've spoken with Lorenzo in Angola. And we've agreed as to hold a joint SADC ESC summit to deal with this problem. Your first step is to say, I've called France in response. So people start seeing you as a puppet. You are holding brief for another country that some of them are not happy with. So it will affect how you are perceived. Because then it means when you are the chair, the country's chair of AU, your first thing will be to call France. People want to have the control of their own continental body, not to give it to a country that is perceived to be dancing to the wishes of receding colonial powers. That was also a blunder. And these are the little, I call them the little things that could have been avoided, were not avoided. In fact, They were done. We raised issues with them. They were ignored. Those are the little things that on the voting day informed some of the decisions on how the country is voted.
So you believe that President William Ruto did not actually handle the Congo crisis as he should have done diplomatically?
More so when Kenya had offered itself to be a candidate for AU chairmanship. He ought not to have meddled in those affairs. He ought to have followed the SADC route and let SADC to lead in terms of the regional interventions to resolve the crisis. He ought not to have been perceived to be taking sides. We ought not to have hosted the rebels to launch their rebel movement here in Nairobi. We ought not to have. To what benefit? How do we benefit as a country?
Don't you think the president was actually aware that he was shooting himself on the foot?
Then maybe you can say this was a long con then. In that case, then this was a long con. Because I believe we have an established and very reputable diplomatic corps service. We have an intelligence service that will have given intelligence to the president on the repercussions of some of these things to the quest by Kenya to chair the regional body. If they were given, then it was ignored. But I don't believe they didn't give those kind of information, the intelligence that is necessary.
Actually, we've seen even some sort of blame games being directed towards our intelligence service that maybe they did not actually inform the president adequately on some of these things.
I cannot say that they didn't inform me. If me, who is not an intelligence officer, I'm just using my basic understanding of international diplomacy and geopolitics to tell you where the faults were. I'm sure the intelligence service that is well resourced had a better brief than I did. Maybe you should ask the person, the consumer of the intelligence, didn't take it into account. Because if they did, there is no way we should have gone to that election as a country without the backing of SADC. EAC, we are only 8. SADC, they are 16. 8 plus 16, 24. That would have been a strong, formidable start. But we never lobbied. Who do we blame? You can't blame intelligence. We blame the ultimate consumer of the intelligence services. That is the person who, in his posturing and in his meddling international issues, isolated the Republic of Kenya from countries that will have been natural allies. Because when you talk about Francophonies, you talk about the Arab world, then Kenya will fall under the Anglophonies. The bulk of Anglophones, as a bloc, are in SADC. Why didn't we get there? We should have gotten all of them. But we didn't, because of DRC. Pure and simple. DRC, to begin with, Raila, is a personal friend to Tshisekedi. Why was Kenya a country taking a hostile position that makes even DRC president to avoid attending the joint EAC SADC meeting in Arusha? He didn't attend. He said he can't be in the same room with Ruto. So, now a personal friend, a vote that is lost purely because of your geopolitics. Your positioning as a country. So it's not Raila who lost, Kenya lost.
Welcome to Herencia, the heartland of good living, where you belong. A community with endless possibilities. Your path to discovering a master plan gated community that matches your ambitions. Get yourself this must-have piece of paradise with state-of-the-art amenities, constant water supply, good security, tarmac roads, and much more. The best part, availability of buy and build financing services. Don't wait. Contact us today or visit our offices for more info. Buy and build your way at Herencia, the heartland of good living.
Wakili, do you think there is some sort of weakness that has been exposed in our diplomatic ties with our countries, with other countries, and how we actually relate with them? And then how best can we actually curb this to ensure that we do relate with other countries in the right way and we avoid such kind of things in the future?
The main thing in my view is that we need to understand what is national interest and personal interest. Because there may be some personal interest in some of the decisions which are being made on our international relations. And personal interest is what leads you to start hosting, in my view, M23 rebels or some rebels from Congo in Nairobi and allow them to launch a rebel movement in Nairobi. When that is going to affect your national interest. Because then right there you isolate DRC as a country, you isolate SADC as a region. But maybe there's personal gain for an individual. So the moment we define a national interest, then we can start relating with the nations. Rwanda has defined its national interest. So if they decide that they want to meddle in DRC, they know what their national interest is. So it's well within them to do it. But Kenya, what is our national interest in DRC? What national interest do we have? Have we defined it? We've not. Because if you ask me, our national interest in DRC, should we want to trade with DRC as a trading partner? Then, if it's a trading partner that we're why do you want to meddle into local politics? Why do we want to host a rebel movement that is trying to oust the regime or to carve off a part of that country? That can't be in our national interest. If our interest is to trade.
Okay. President William Ruto has been termed as, or rather portrayed as, maybe a puppet of the West in the recent past, going by his actions. Do you think that that could also have influenced maybe how other African countries look at us as a country?
Of course, if you look at how Ruto has spoken on some of the global issues, dancing to the tunes of Western capitals, the conflict in Palestine, going out to condemn Israel, Palestinians, as opposed to calling out the killings of Palestinians by Israel, when AU had taken a position. So you see a pattern of William Ruto taking positions that are hostile to the AU positions. The debacle in Morocco with Western Sahrawi, there is an AU position on it. He made, that was the first thing, diplomatic blunder he made, meddling in that issue, contrary to what the AU position was. The issue with Ukraine and Russia, going contrary to the AU position to condemn Russia. The issue with Israel and Palestine, going contrary to the AU position to condemn the Palestinians. So it doesn't make sense. Because some of these things, once an AU position has been developed, remember the AU position accommodates all nations' interests. And it's a painstaking process by the time the AU arrives at a position. There's been wide consultations and consensus that involves so many countries that people have had to give and take to arrive at a joint position. Why do you want to move away from the joint position developed through such a very spirited and heightened process? So it makes you a pariah to the regional bloc.
Okay.
So yes, he's a puppet of the Western world. That is why Kenya as a country is now struggling to get continental positions.
Finally, it's not the first time that Kenya has had a candidate for this particular position. The other time we had Amina Mohamed, and I believe you can attest here that our diplomatic relations back then with President Uhuru were not as they are right now with President William Ruto with regards to other countries. So what then is the difference for you? Why is it that Kenya still did not manage to make it that particular moment in time when some of these factors here that now exist right now were not there back then?
Back to the same question, SADC. The SADC region as a region had taken a position that since Dlamini Zuma, who was a SADC candidate, had not served her full 2 terms, the next chairperson ought to have been from the SADC region. So the SADC region decided to stand down from that election when the Botswana candidate had fronted dropped out of the third round. So they said, we are not going to vote. Again, SADC. If Kenya had developed a position with SADC, built consensus with them on that election, Amina will have won. But we didn't build a rapport with the SADC region. We didn't sympathize with their quest for a second term of the region. So they decided we're also not going to vote. They kept off as a bloc, 16 votes gone.
Okay.
That's why Amina lost. That's why Kenya lost again this time, SADC.
Well, then I believe that we should actually watch on how we actually relate with other countries, and we should redefine, recheck, and perhaps re-establish our foreign relations and look at how we play geopolitics here as a nation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. You may weigh in and tell us, what's your view? What do you think? Why did Kenya actually lose this race, this moment in time? Allow me to stop for now till we have this conversation again. Have yourself a lovely day. My name is Evans Okinyi.